All right, welcome back. So I think today we got a slew of very diverse topics potentially. We'll see how it goes, but I think the one that kind of caught our attention off the bat was an article that came out claiming essentially that the push for new tech jobs is more of a push for lower wages than it is for actual success of people or students who are taking the programs.
Yeah, well, that's what this article says, and it's written by, I don't know who this is. It looks like an opinion piece in The Guardian, and it's essentially saying the title is "Tech's Push to Teach Coding Isn't About Kids' Success, It's About Cutting Wages," and then the gist of it is that this push from Silicon Valley companies to teach kids how to code isn't really about making sure that kids can go into, have successful lives and professional careers and all that. It's really about making sure that the Silicon Valley companies can continue to have a pipeline of people to do the work for them because there's a huge shortage of people to do it.
There's a shortage of people to staff the startups because the people that they really want is way outside their price range. They can't afford it. And I think you're onto something with that.
Yeah.
Well, it is a supply and demand thing, obviously. I mean, we get the kind of rates we do because there aren't enough skilled people to be able to do it.
Right.
But there's also growing demand along with the...
Yeah, I mean, this article, I don't know. It was like, wouldn't this kind of be true about teaching kids anything ever?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Right. Because the more people that can do it, it's like if you have more people to pick from, you don't have to pay people as much because it's not like there's just a few experts.
Right.
So I don't know. I mean, like Matt was starting to say, like it's a byproduct of. It's not necessarily. I don't know if that's the goal of the tech community to drive down wages.
I hope not, but.
Well, okay. Would we think it was weird if plumbers were trying to convince schools, hey, we need to create more plumbers?
Yeah, I think it would be.
So why isn't this weird?
Good question.
And point to Pat. But to the point of education being used kind of as a platform to train people for work, is one, I think, and my history might be wrong here, but original education was built to prepare people to do factory line work. If I believe the archetype was similar to that. The structure of it was to make that transition easier when mass labor was needed for assembly lines and all the other stuff. So we would teach kids, hey, we're going to teach you in a certain way to make that transition easier.
War, I think was the, like World War I
probably,
and II were the thing.
Definitely the catalyst.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know that it's too far out the bounds for what he's saying in a high-level theory of, I guess the bigger question here is, does education prepare people to work in mass, or is it for their own benefit?
Well, one of the points that he makes is like, Sarah, you were kind of saying that it's like, well, there's a lot of jobs and openings, and we need to fill those positions and stuff like that. And one of the points he's making is there aren't enough good jobs that people are getting trained for. So, like, if we continue this push, it's like we might fill the need, eventually, but if we keep training everybody to learn how to code, then eventually we're not going to have enough good jobs for that. And he's kind of saying that, like, at one point in here, he was kind of suggesting that even now, there aren't as many jobs as people think.
Right.
And I think that is true, but it still is growing. There's still more need for tech all the time. More people are needing tech work done.
He says, for all the talk of a tech worker shortage, many qualified graduates simply can't find jobs. I don't think that's true.
I don't think that's true either.
I think they're probably not qualified, or they're really bad at finding jobs.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
I have not seen that play out at all. And we've all run into plenty of unqualified people who have really good jobs.
Yeah, and I know for me, like in my graduating class, I think there was only like 40 computer science graduates, but I think there was only 2 that didn't have jobs, and of the 2, one just didn't want a job, and the other one had no idea what was going on. So I don't really feel like, I don't know if that's necessarily true now. I feel like if he was predicting, like, 15 years from now, this is going to be a problem, like, Potentially, yeah. But for right now, from what I'm seeing, especially with like everyone that I know in the industry, it's not, if you're qualified and you know how to find a job, you can find a new job.
Right.
And I think this isn't a field that's for everyone anyway. I mean, and not just from the standpoint of being capable to do it. There are people that will just find this mind-numbing what we do.
Right.
Oh yeah.
Definitely.
So teaching everybody to code, introducing it at a young age in the schools and teaching everybody some code, I don't have a problem with that. I think you need some technical prowess in this society to function moving forward. But not everybody's going to want to do this for a living.
Well, there's also just learning how to think logically can have a lot of really good, it can really help everybody regardless of the job that they eventually end in.
Right. I would think that like teaching the younger generation just problem solving skills is most important. And then if they end up being programmers, that's great and everything. But like what you're saying, I know so many people that are great problem solvers and they try this and they hate it. And I have a lot of friends that are engineers that had to take like MATLAB in college, and they hated that more than anything. They thought it was so boring. And they're amazing problem solvers. So it's definitely not for everybody. And I think that introducing people to it when they're really young definitely will help like society as a whole. But yeah, I don't think all those people that are introduced to it whenever they're in the third grade are going to go on to become programmers.
I don't think they need to either. Like,
Right. So what's curious about that is two institutions that I know of have started this, or at least are planning on starting this. One being Miami University's business school, Farmers School Business, is starting to require coding classes for their business majors. And the other, I believe, is GE, for a number of positions, is also requiring entry-level coding class something, kind of as part of their onboarding process. So in a weird way, to his point, do those things, are those similar means to that end of, are they trying to depress kind of the need or the wage for just tech-focused people, because now it's business and tech being kind of thrown together in this weird way? Or is that just, to Morgan's point, kind of the use for, hey, we just think this is a good way to teach logic skills?
Well, and I think that brings up an interesting point, because it's not just development that needs to know how to code now. I mean, look at some of the just standard industries that need some kind of scripting ability. Machinists, historically, did their work without, but now they're actually writing code.
Right.
Yeah, and I think though that giving people a few intro classes so that they can script some things here and there, maybe do some break fix stuff, maybe work as like an analyst or project lead. They're not advanced software developers, so there's still going to be a need for senior people that are qualified and know what they're doing. And teaching people just the basics is not enough to depreciate the value of somebody who can actually write enterprise level software.
there's also as more people do this, I don't even know that that's going to have less jobs available. As more people learn how to do these things, which is, this software is largely about automating things that already happen.
Yep.
So usually when you're making software, you're not creating new processes or new companies, or companies is the wrong word. You're not creating you're not inventing businesses. Even Uber, which was a brand new thing, it was really just how do we make taxiing easier, right? So it's as you build the automation part, you sort of need less of the other thing, the people that were doing it manually in the first place.
And I think sometimes you're holding back innovation by not having enough people in those areas that can do those things.
Right.
So by training them, you have the people who understand the business, who understand the domain of the area they work, and now have the skill to do something more with it.
But we still need people that understand the business.
Absolutely.
Or the developers are never going to have anything to automate because you're not inventing those things. Those things already happen. There are already people that know how they work, and you're just taking the steps and you're making it so that a person doesn't have to do them anymore.
Correct.
Yeah, and I know for some of I've been doing this whole corporate training thing. So not every single person that comes through our corporate training is going to be a stellar developer. But they now have the background where they're going to be able to understand the applications they're working on so much better. And it just gives like a different perspective on things that most people have never thought about, especially if you've been in your career for, 20 years, 30 years, and you've never taken a look under the covers to see what's going on. So I think that it helps for business people to have that background in general. It just makes them work better with the developers they may be working with. It helps them work with software better, more technically, sound. So yeah, I feel like it's good, but like what Pat's saying, like we still need people to be on the business. It just makes it a lot easier to manage that relationship between both when both sides kind of know a little bit about each other.
Yeah.
So go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, you first.
I lost my train of thought now. So go.
Well, all right. See, success. So in a weird way, and this is kind of really diving into the topic, does that kind of make code on a fundamental level, kind of the equivalence and importance to like basic math or English skills? Does understanding that in today's world become a fundamental need, or in the very closely approaching, become a fundamental need for everyone? Hey, if everyone understood this, does the world automatically become slightly better?
Better? I don't know. Those people probably become smarter.
And I would argue, I think, are we putting too much emphasis again on code?
Fair.
Because it is just an artifact of what we do. It goes back to what Morgan was saying. It is problem solving. That is the key. And I think every person can benefit from learning logic and problem solving. And that's what we need to focus on more. The language you choose, the syntax you use, the way you write the code, that's really minuscule in the grand scheme of it.
Yeah, I think just having the ability to come at a problem and think from a bunch of different perspectives and try to figure out the best route is what's going to be beneficial to everybody in their jobs. So I know, like, we've all said at some point or another, it's like, okay, yeah, I'm a programmer, but I really just like to solve problems, and this is just how I do it.
Like, I remember in high school, I took like an electrical working, like I worked with electricity and worked with wood and worked with steel and like had to make stuff out of all these things. Like, it was very useful, even though I've never done that in my career or in life. But it like just like I don't know.
I think having those classes like that, well, like for me, having circuits classes when I was going for a programming thing, it's like, really, why do I need this? What I didn't realize then that I realize now in hindsight is that it helps to reinforce things like logic.
Yeah.
And how does this work? And following a pattern and following a process and understanding how it all comes together. So in reality, it could have helped me in programming had I realized then that, oh yeah, this is nothing more than logic, ands and nands and...
Yeah, and it did help me a lot, especially the electric shop one, where you were putting together circuits, and like I remember like you had to wire together like light bulbs and switches, and like all of that stuff is actually pretty applicable to software development because there's lots of logic things like that.
Well, and the thing with circuits too is you actually had to plan ahead of time, so you had to do schematics, otherwise lots of smoke. But still, it's just like in programming, we have to come up with our UMLs and our flowcharts. So it's a parallel behavior in a way because we do the design first, draw things out, and then we put our craft to use.
And even if you look at the designs, like you said, UMLs and flowcharts, they end up looking a lot like if you designed an electrical system.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I feel like breaking down, decomposing problems is a really big issue, and like a lot of people don't know how to do that. So I think by getting your business people or just kids or anybody to learn how to do that is going to help bridge the gap between people who are just already good at that sort of thing, like developers. So if you're on the job, I mean, we've all had horrible requirements at the beginning of a project. And it's basically because people can't figure out how to decompose the problem in a way that makes sense.
You had requirements at the beginning of your project?
I did once.
Yeah.
I had requirements.
We have
one
a
time.
requirement. We need an app. It needs to do everything.
Yeah.
Do all the things.
No, my favorite one is like, hey, Morgan, we need a form for the corporate side of things. So, okay, what's on the form? And then nothing. And then the next release is like, hey, where's that form? We needed to submit to an email address.
What email address?
Yeah, what are you I literally
form?
have nothing to go on.
Yeah.
I will give you a page with an input box and a submit button, and that's all I'm going to do. So I feel like if we could get people to actually know how to take what they're trying to do, like here's the goal, and I can decompose this into a logical set of steps and groupings of like the way we're going to do things, that would help a ton if business people could not, I always say business people, there are obviously business people out there that are good at it, but if everybody could get a little bump, that'd be
Well, I
great.
mean, the business people tend to be like they're familiar with the business, right? And like they know like there's a calculation or something, and they'll be really, really familiar with the calculation, but they're not familiar with what are all the steps I actually need to collect the information to run this calculation. So they don't even think about where these numbers come from. They just see a formula that they have to plug stuff into, and then they're like, why can't you just plug stuff in and it just works?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, it's almost like that expert blind spot on the business side. They don't understand that we don't know the process at all. So you
Right,
have to give me
right.
extremely detailed logical requirements for me to be able to do exactly what you need.
Which is the heart of development, is taking those and then telling a computer to do them for you.
Right.
So it's like if the business people could walk through those same logical steps, they almost wouldn't even need developers.
Yeah, yeah. And Microsoft has tried to make development tools that business people can use, like Light Switch and things like that.
But they don't know this. They don't have the skill set of
Exactly.
breaking down problems that way.
Exactly, and that's where they've failed.
Well, it's not that they've. It's
Well, that's where those projects have failed at this
Right,
point.
I gotcha.
That's
Right.
that's what I'm getting at.
Right.
That's where Microsoft failed. Right there.
There it is. Yeah. It's in
You
the
heard it
recording.
here, everybody.
well, if they hadn't done that.
Yeah,
It'd be fine.
yeah. Bill Gates might actually have some money if
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Poor Bill Gates. Jinx.
Oh boy.
Java 9 was released.
And what's new in Java 9?
Yeah.
Apparently, it's modular now. Mm-hmm. Which I guess if you're making a toaster is really nice.
Yeah, package a toaster and a new module with the jigsaw stuff.
So they're trying to catch up to .NET Core, is what you're telling me, making it modular.
Kinda. And, but that has its own problems. But because like I don't know, people that write business stuff are used to having like you have enough. You don't need a modular system because having all of Java is fine. It's like not that big. But if you're developing an app for a much lower tier device, then modularity might be important.
So is it like what .NET Core is doing? Is it? I mean, we have NuGet as a packet manager on the .NET side, and everything we need is delivered through NuGet at build time. So you set up a new project and you set up your dependencies, and then whatever package manager you're using, NuGet for example, when you build the packages you need are implemented in your project.
Well, Java's had that style of dependency management for a long time.
Well, .NET has too, but
I know,
that's,
but this is more about the built-in stuff to Java.
Yeah.
So like you'll instead of fetching libraries that are based on Java, like you're gonna fetch part of Java.
well, and that's the same with .NET Core, but they're using these package managers to do that.
Oh, okay.
So
I'm not sure the exact mechanics. It says, I don't know. It's called Jigsaw.
Jigsaw,
Yeah, the
nice.
How
jigsaw
appropriate.
project.
It's like gonna like put you in weird torture traps and
I was gonna say that way you can cut your finger off when you're
right.
frustrated.
A modular JDK. There's a Java linker that are part of it.
It's got a new HTTP client, I guess.
In Java 9, yeah.
Variable handles? I don't know what that means.
Yeah, I'm opening that one up now.
I like it when the Java professionals around me go, I don't know what that means.
Variable handles.
Guess what? That's software professionals in general.
Is that how that goes?
Yeah.
I don't know what that means. Let me read about it on the internet.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And then
Which,
claim to be an expert.
yes, which is I'm watching it. I'm watching the process happen right now. It's a beautiful thing.
And then there's JShell, which is also part of Java 9.
I think it's just, I mean, it looks like it's trying to remove some dependency on some old Sun stuff,
Yeah.
which makes sense. I don't know. From looking at the feature list as a Java developer, there's very little here that I'm like, I need this. So the general reaction I saw to it was, oh, good, we can use Java 8 forever still.
I don't see anything like earth-shattering.
No.
Yeah, I was going to say, I feel like with Java 8, there was some things that actually improved, like, what I'm doing right now for almost everybody. So, and with this, I'm like,
Well, it was the lambdas and the streams was
Right.
the big one. And there's nothing like that
Right.
in this.
No, there's
'Cause-
additional stuff for lambdas and streams, like take while, some stuff that we've already had on.
Stuff
in-
that .NET's had forever.
Yeah, stuff that we have in C# and Link. Java's finally catching up with their lambdas and streams, and Java 9 gives them a little more to catch up with. So, but again, not really earth-shattering.
Well, I think we've kind of reached the point of these languages where it's like there's not going to be a ton of earth-shattering stuff added.
No, actually, at this point, it's almost a, well, whatever you can do, I can do better. That's all they're trying to do is just
Yeah.
one up each other, and you can do anything you want in either language. It's yeah.
Is there anything not there that you would have liked to see?
No.
Okay.
I mean, Java's been really nice for a long time. Like, the libraries that people use in Java maybe have improved a lot over the last decade or so, but the language itself has been pretty stable. And I mean, that's one of the reasons people choose it, is that it very rarely changes, in the sense that if you wrote a Java application in 2005, it probably still.
yeah, they're
Yeah.
very committed to backwards compatibility. Like, they'll go
Yeah.
really far out of their way to try to make the new versions backwards compatible. So that's really useful for business people, because you don't have to
Yeah.
constantly
Less
rewrite things all the
upkeep
time.
Yep.
So even though it has like a reputation of being like an older, clunkier, lots of boilerplate code type of language, a lot of businesses like it because of that backwards compatibility component.
Right.
And so most of the new frameworks exist largely to hide all the boilerplate
Right.
stuff from you.
Right. So if you're using the frameworks that are out there like Spring and you're using them well and to their full capacity, you're not writing that much boilerplate code now. So things have kind of progressed past Java's like initial reputation.
Yeah.
And actually, .NET's a lot the same way. They work really hard to maintain backward compatibility as well. When you upgrade to a new framework, very rarely are there a few things you have to tweak, but it's never a rewrite. Almost never, I should say.
I'm gonna say very rarely is a rewrite.
Yeah, I was working on on an app where we were using like a really old version of Java and updated it to Java 8, skipping multiple versions, and we only had to change like, I don't know, I think we only had to modify like 3 classes out of like thousands.
Yeah.
So, and it was not a big deal.
It's like tech evolves very quickly, but the fundamentals of software almost never change. Like, we're doing most of the same stuff that they were doing in like the early 80s, except the syntax is nicer and we've figured out where not to step.
Yeah. Yep.
But it's like, the computer science portion of it progresses like at the same rate as math. Like, never.
Yeah, no, it is curious kind of to put technology doing what it's doing, and then the fundamentals underneath it are still what they are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, that kind of blows my mind to think about how that's happening. 'Cause in a weird way, at a surface level for a novice, it almost doesn't make sense.
Yeah, it's like, I know for me when I took my first like computer systems class, it's like it's teaching you about basic switches and electronics and stuff like that. They're like, okay, now do that like a billion times in a second.
Yeah.
And I'm like, because they start you out like, here's one, and I'm going to build it in front of you right now, and you can see it. And now we put like a million of these on like something that's the size of like a tip of a pen. And I'm like,
Right.
Well-
that makes no sense to me. It's like a human person. I remember just being like, yeah, no, I don't.
Right,
I
the
don't,
smoke's
I don't
coming out of
see
your
how
ears,
this,
and it's not.
yeah.
Right? Yeah.
And that's something we try to tell our apprentices. It's computers can only do 3 things: branch, loop, and evaluate expressions, mathematical expressions, essentially. That's
Right.
it. That's all they can do.
Right.
Now take that and put it all together and
Yeah,
do it over and over
I
again.
was going to say do a billion of that thing.
Yeah.
And even those things are like made up.
Yeah,
Like,
it really it really is on or off. They are switches.
Yeah.
On off.
they've just figured out how can we take a bunch of on-off decisions and turn them into those three things,
Yes.
which was like the first step.
Right, so there's this book called, let's see here, Code, the Hidden Language of Computer Hardware and Software. One of my cohorts bought me this book because I went on like an epic rant about this one day for like 30 minutes. And I'm like, because my friends will have their phones and they're like, oh, my phone's a piece of garbage, it's so slow. And I'm like, that is a magic brick in your hand. Like, if you understood anything about technology, you would know. Meanwhile, like yesterday, I was complaining to Pat that my camera is blurry, so I was going to throw it away. But yeah, this book, they bought me this book because they're like, clearly you care about this.
What's the book about?
It tells you about like how we started like building logic. So it goes even from like before the first computer and how they got there. Because I was saying like, now that it's been created and it's happening, I can understand that like, okay, this is what's happening now. But I'm like, how did that first person figure it out? Like, that's what I want to know. Because I myself am not like an inventor type, you know? So I have no idea how anyone figured this shit out.
I'm convinced they did, and it's just black magic, period.
Yeah,
that's all
what
it
I'm
is.
saying. All my friends that are complaining about their phones,
Yeah.
magic brick. How dare you?
I'm going to use that now. Anytime somebody complains about their phone, I'm going to call it a magic brick.
Yeah,
'Cause
my
that's
friends are
perfect.
like, let's not take Morgan to the bar anymore.
I see that as, yes, a very understandable byproduct of that conversation. Oh, boy.
All right, and then we had another thing here about how it's in sciencemag.org, which I assume is legit.
Looks legit.
It has a science name, so
And .org.
yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
so,
it's not a .com, it's a .org.
Yeah.
That's instant credibility.
and it's they got a study here that says infants make more attempts to achieve a goal when they see adults persist. And it sounds like they had a bunch of babies and they watched, for instance, somebody struggle to like get a container open or something, and then eventually get it open. And then had the kids that watched that try to get the container open. I don't know if it's actually a container. I guess I could read it. Whatever.
That sounds like a lot of work. I mean, it's sciencemag.org. Do you need to read it? Just read the headline. It must be good.
Yeah. But then they had kids watch somebody just, hey, I'm going to take the lid off, and it worked great, right? And then see which kids actually figured out the problem. And the ones that watched the adults, like, fail at it for a long time first before succeeding actually tried. And the ones that watched the adults just immediately succeed, what they apparently, the theory here is that, you know, they see, it just doesn't work, so there's nothing I can do. Versus when they watched the adults struggle, what they learned was, if I try and like grunt.
I don't know what's better.
That's how you show that you're struggling.
Yeah.
You have to grunt.
Yes.
I don't know what's better, the actual study or Pat's imitation of the study.
Oh my God, my son, when he was like a kid, like 3 years old, like my mom and my grandma, when they would sit down, they make because they're older, and it just hurts to sit down.
Things to look forward to, kids.
Old
Yes.
little noises.
So then, like, he started when he was young. Every time he would sit down, he'd make the same.
This is how you sit.
This is how you sit.
Right.
So I think it's kind of the same thing in that
It is. It's imitation.
You have to learn to mimic, like you learn to mimic what you see, and if what you see is just constant success, you don't learn how to
achieve it.
You don't learn that struggle is part of the process.
Right.
Right. Like if you don't see anybody else failing, and they you're not going to do that and then get back up. So I can see how people would just.
If you watch LeBron James play basketball and you go out there and you don't sink every foul shot, this isn't worth it.
Yeah.
I give up.
I don't know how
Right.
the ball's broken.
Yeah.
Look, it's
Right. It's everything
Saw
else.
LeBron
It's
do
not
it. Why
like-
can't I do it?
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, no, I mean, in a weird way, it's both intuitive and not intuitive when you look at it, right? Because I guess the immediate reaction might be to, like, well, if they see people failing, then they would be discouraged, quote unquote, right? Like, well, they can't do it. There's no way I'm going to do this. But in a weird way, the inverse happens. Like, they did it, and as soon as I hit that first wall, I don't know what to do now.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I feel like we even try to do that in our classes sometimes here. It's like, I'm going to live code things so that you can see me mess up.
Yeah.
Right.
A lot.
Right.
Yeah.
And then you're going to watch me fix it. And if sometimes I don't know, even just looking at it. And so you're going to watch me Google it and then find an answer there and then be like, oh, okay, that makes sense. And then fix it.
And I have had apprentices actually come to me and say, wow, I didn't realize the process was like that.
Right. It helps so much.
Yeah.
And so I feel like we do that here. I can see how that same type of thing would apply just on a basic level.
Yeah, you're right. Like I've had classes where I'm trying to teach somebody something, and like my computer doesn't work, and I have to sit there for 20 minutes while I fix it.
Yep.
And I could see everybody's face. They're like, "This is the best thing that's ever happened."
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because good, thank God, everybody's human.
And then
Right.
there are those times when you've done this code along so many times and you sit there and just cruise through it and forget to make it difficult.
Right.
And you realize it had no value to them. They didn't get anything out of it.
Yeah, that's true.
Generally now I leave things broken on purpose
Yeah.
so that I remember to go back and show them the struggle. And then there's more times where I legitimately just break shit. It's like, oh, so I thought this was going to work. And turns out I don't know things. So let's go back a few steps.
Right. Right. Learn this with me, guys.
Let's try this not being dumb,
Yeah,
real quick.
let's do it in the
Just
not
for a
dumb
moment.
way.
Right.
Don't do the way I did it. I'm dumb. Do it anyway.
Yeah.
You're right. No, that's a good one.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I think that covers our diverse array of topics for the afternoon.
I think so.
Bye, everyone.
Nice to have everybody here today.
Oh yeah, always. Very good.
So join us next time for the DevCoaches podcast.
Oh, no, there it goes. You had to do it, didn't you, Pat?